thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us.
Not an unlucky day.
Yeah, you guys, that's right. Good morning. It is Friday, September 13th. That's right. You're so right, Mathieu St. Germain. It is Friday the 13th. And you know what today is? You're going to love this. Today is Positive Thinking Day.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
How's that going, Beth?
Yep. It's also National Celiac Disease Awareness Day. We need to hit play on this.
It's the only reason to be gluten-free.
Mm-hmm. It's also Uncle Sam Day. National Peanut Day. Bring this down.
Shout out Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
I mean, Rico's not here. I feel like I got to do this.
Rico will be here shortly. He is traveling. His mom is having some surgery today, so we want to send some prayers and love out to her today. And it's also National Kids Take Over the Kitchen Day.
No.
Mm-hmm. And today should be dedicated to Dr. T because it's also National Bald is Beautiful Day today.
Well,
That man has a full head of dreads.
I completely agree.
See what I'm saying? Matt? Adam, there's something that popped up on there. I can't see any of this. Okay. Oh, man. Can you bring this down? All right. Thank you.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it's all good. Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above or down below on your screen to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. But kicking it off today, so we are waiting on Rico to arrive. So we are going to start this off. Dr. T, you game to start this off today? You with us, Dr. T? You're on mute.
Sure, yeah,
All right.
I'm here.
All right, amazing. We are going to start it off with Dr. Gene Talleyrand. He's the founder of the CESC as well as Medican, where you should be getting all of your recommendations, especially if you're in the great state of California. He's been writing recommendations so long that he probably even wrote your parents' recommendation as well, even though they won't tell you that story. But nonetheless, it is none other than Dr. Gene Talleyrand.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. My story today is from Marijuana Moment. Medical cannabis helps people with arthritis and other rheumatic conditions reduce use of opioids and other medications, study shows, by Ben Adlin. So the pharmaceutical drug industry executives are thinking, yet another set of conditions where people choose cannabis over our drugs. Or is this the force of another industry? New research on the use of medical cannabis among people with rheumatoid arthritis and related conditions finds that more than 6 out of 10 patients who use cannabis reported substituting it for other medications like NSAIDs, Advil or Aleve, opioids, sleep aids, and muscle relaxants. Most patients further said that the use of cannabis allowed them to reduce or stop their medications entirely. The study was funded by grants from the National Institute on Drug Abuse and the National Institute of Arthritis. The results were recently published in a journal by the American College of Rheumatology. The primary reasons for substitution of prescription drugs for medical cannabis were fewer adverse effects, better symptom management, and concerns about withdrawal, wrote the authors. Substitution was associated with significantly higher symptoms, including pain, sleep, anxiety, and joint symptoms, improvement of those symptoms. So data from the study came from an online anonymous survey of adults from the US and Canada, solicited by the Arthritis Foundation. 1,727 people completed the survey. 763 of the respondents, that's 63%, said that they currently use cannabis. 655 said they never used cannabis, and 268 said they had used but had since discontinued. Of those who had used cannabis, about 2/3 reported a diagnosis of inflammatory rheumatic disease, and a similar number reported concomitant conditions such as fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis, and mechanical spine pain. 44% of the respondents used CBD, 27% used THC, and 20% used a balance of THC and CBD products, type 2. About the same number of respondents inhaled as used edibles. The authors noted that inhalation was a common method of administration, with all the attendant risks of respiratory disease and aggravation of an inflammatory condition. They may not realize that many people who inhale cannabis don't complain or have signs of respiratory disease. However, they concluded, given the immediate pharmacokinetic effect of inhaled cannabis, this method of administration may be most satisfactory for people seeking rapid symptom relief, and especially for pain. Another finding was that more than half of the participants used cannabis at least once per day. More and more research studies suggest that patients with a variety of conditions use cannabis as a substitute for other medications. For example, a study published in the Journal of Nurse Practitioners reported that prescription drug use decreased significantly after medical cannabis use, and health characteristics and symptom intensity improved significantly. A study of over 500 veterans noted improved quality of life and reduced over-the-counter and prescription use. The same was found in another study of elderly experiencing considerable improvement in health and well-being and moderately reduced opioids. So what happens when the pharmaceutical industry loses revenue to cannabis sales? It's well known that Big Pharma influences government-controlled substances and rescheduling. They hire ex-officials from the DEA. Just last year, the DEA's second-in-command had to resign because he consulted with a pharmaceutical company sanctioned for suspicious painkiller shipments. During the opioid crisis, Big Pharma devised tactics to push back against the Drug Enforcement Agency and blame the federal government for not doing enough to stop the epidemic. Some say that this news upsets alcohol and tobacco industry, who desperately want to make cannabis a vice rather than a wellness product. Meanwhile, people are choosing cannabis over pharmaceutical industry pills. This is Dr. Jean Talleyrand with High at 9 News.
Man, this is great news, Dr. T. I mean, this is just proving what we have believed for a long time, based off of just anecdotal evidence, and now we got some studies to back up our hypothesis from all of this that we've been doing over the years.
Yeah, a lot of people are choosing cannabis as a wellness product rather than a vice. Will this, with the powers that be, does this make a big shift in how they behave around cannabis? Is this not good for them because they want it to be a vice and alcohol and tobacco want to take over cannabis? Or is this not good for pharma, or is this good for pharma? Those are my questions for, the big players who are moving us around like pawns.
Very, very.
Well, I think this is why we're seeing a big shift in people who are using cannabis, especially as they get older in age, right? So we see people who are baby boomer age who've been told, like, this is bad, this is a drug, just say no. And now as they're reaching these stages of life where they're dealing with all these health issues and they're have nowhere else to turn. They're not finding relief in pharmaceuticals. They're finding relief, but the cure is worse than disease in a lot of senses. So I think that that's a big reason for that trend. And I don't know how much time you guys have spent in the state of Florida, but Florida is very known for its opioid epidemic. And if you notice, those billboards that are for pill mills have turned into that. The doctors didn't give the pill mill boards up. They just changed them to, they will now write your cannabis recommendation, which I also have an issue with. I think you could go to guys like Dr. T who actually understand and believe in the medicine, because there is a requirement that your doctor actually treats you like a doctor and actually kind of follows up with you and is able to give you kind of care suggestions and treat you in a way that you should be treated at any other physician. And unless you have that cannabis-based education, you're not able to do that. So I think we're obviously scaring pharma, and we're scaring those pill mill doctors because they're realizing they're writing less oxy prescriptions and a lot more 12 plant counts. So I love to see it.
A lot of them also have moved into ketamine clinics.
Yep.
Yeah,
that also.
That part.
Glad you're here for that one, Matthew.
Yep.
Got your back.
Any thoughts on this, Dr. Mark?
Yeah, they just, if they end prohibition and this is treated like an agricultural commodity, the market will sort of work out itself. I don't think, again, the FDA has a proper way to sort of regulate it. They shut it down. The idea of it being a dietary supplement. So, okay, if it's not a dietary supplement, it's certainly not a drug, right? It's not an active ingredient that's packed into some pill that's then been shown in clinical trials to do such and such. Although, with the fact that there are FDA-approved drugs like Epidiolex and like Marinol and such, but the plant from which it's derived is still Schedule 1, which by definition means no medical use whatsoever. I mean, the whole thing is just a hypocrisy.
Absolutely.
And we got to just keep reminding everybody the scheduling system was invented by Richard Nixon to go after the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, free speech movement, Black Panthers, the Weather Underground, the SDS. It's
look at that. Even more.
There's no actual medical purpose for the scheduling system.
Even more the reason no one should be supporting Schedule 3 then, Matthew, just based off of that.
One should support any scheduling system, nor the Republican fascists that initiated it.
Whoa.
I love you.
Well, I mean, I think the scheduling system is a tool used by the pharmaceutical industry to control what doesn't enter. So they're definitely interested in controlling it. The question is, do they care? Do they see cannabis as their own? Or is it really alcohol and tobacco? Who cares?
And
I think they all care. I think anybody who seeks to monetize it cares, right? That's why we see Philip Morris having cultivations up in Humboldt. That's why we see GW Pharmaceuticals, the former GW Pharmaceuticals, doing things like Epidiolex and trying to patent and control the aqueous suspension of cannabinoids, which they fucked up on because they didn't understand the plant. So, I mean, I think that they all have a stake in it, and it's racing to see who can monetize it first.
Fair enough. And I do want to introduce to everybody Josh Swider, who is the CEO of Infinite Chemical Analysis Labs. And welcome, Josh, coming on today. Thank you so much. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, it's always an interesting thing when you talk about Schedule 1 narcotic and then we're scheduling a plant with multiple compounds. It doesn't make sense. So I think going back to it, it's how does Marinol get on it? I 100% agree. Marinol normally isn't grown, though. It's not extracted. It's made in the lab, too.
Yeah, it's a synthetic.
It's negative trans delta 9. Exactly. Nothing else.
Negative trans delta 9.
Oh, don't tell Trump and the Republicans that it's got trans in it, dude.
Oh, boy.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. You know what? On that, we're going to go to a commercial. We are going to be right back.
The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated.
All right, and we are back, you guys. Still no Rico yet, right, Adam? No Rico
Nope.
yet? Okay, all right. I'm gonna roll into my story then, because this is a long one for you guys. I'm sorry, but this is some important stuff going on, because those prohibitionists, they are at it again, you guys. That's right, because a lawsuit seeks to invalidate Nebraska's medical marijuana ballot measure, you guys. That's right. A former state senator who is also a former state board of health member filed a legal challenge on Thursday seeking to invalidate 2 Nebraska ballot petitions related to medical cannabis. Josh Cohen of Hartwell, a veterinarian and rancher who has fought any form of marijuana legalization, argued the 2 measures should not be placed on the November 5th ballot. Cluen, through attorneys Stephen E. Gunzel and Cameron E. Gunzel and Andrew LaGrone, also a former state senator, cites 7 reasons ranging from procedural violations to state constitution and federal law infractions. The lawsuit was filed Thursday afternoon in Lancaster County District Court, and Kuhn served in the legislature from 2015 to 2019, has been the leader in smart approaches to marijuana, or better known as Project SAM, a national organization that seeks to prevent another big tobacco. And LaGrone served 2 years in the legislature back in 2019 through 2021 and is married to current state senator Julie Slama. Both Kuhn and LaGrone were close allies of then Governor Pete Ricketts during their time in the legislature, and Ricketts appointed Kuhn to the State Board of Health and LaGrone to the legislature. There are 7 alleged complaints, though the lawsuit through the lawsuit, Kuhn is seeking to prevent Nebraska Secretary of State Bob Envin from certifying both petitions for the November 5th ballot. If they are placed on the ballot, Kuhn seeks to prevent the state from certifying the election results of those measures if he is successful. By state law, Envin must certify the ballot by Friday, because early voting ballots must be sent to overseas voters as early as next Friday, September 20th, and the lawsuit sets up a tight timeline for the lower court and a likely appeal to the Nebraska Supreme Court. Judge Susan Strong has been assigned to this case, and the 2 petitions would respectively legalize and regulate medical cannabis, extending legal protections to and defining who is a patient, caregiver, or related medical provider. The petition is backed by Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana and led by statewide campaign manager Krista Eggers, State Senator Anna Wishart of Lincoln, and a former State Senator Adam Moorfield of Lincoln. Evanin and the trio leading the campaign are named in the lawsuit, and a spokesperson for the Secretary of State's office said Evanin had no immediate comment and more information on the cannabis petitions would be available on Friday. In an official statement, the campaign said Secretary Envin declared that both NMM initiatives collected enough valid signatures to be certified. We are confident that NMM satisfied all legal requirements and gathered the required signatures to qualify for placement on the November ballot. Kuhn alleges the following reasons that should invalidate the petitions. Get ready for you guys, because there's 7 of them. Delays from the Nebraska Secretary of State's office in making copies of signatures available for public scrutiny upon request. The lawsuit states the Secretary of State Bob Envin has a duty to ensure that any diligent challenger has a meaningful opportunity to exercise their right to seek review and appeal before he certifies the ballot. And not enough valid signatures for the ballot access, and a failure of Envin to strike duplicative signatures and invalid sponsor statement from Senator Anna Wishart of Lincoln. We can roll this down a little bit. Both petitioners, a violation on both petitions related to the state's constitutional single subject rule that all measures must contain only one subject, an unlawful delegation of power to a proposed Nebraska Medical Cannabis Commission that would oversee regulation of medical cannabis, and finally, preemption of federal laws that prohibit marijuana as a Schedule I drug, you guys. Man, oh man. The plaintiff is entitled to expedited injunctive relief, the lawsuit states, and Kuhn argues that based on the petition pages he had reviewed and in evidence that will be presented to the court, many signatures were invalid and unlawfully accepted by the secretary under the state law. And counties share the burden of validating signatures and must do so within 40 days of receiving the signatures from Evanen's office in Lincoln, Nebraska. Evanen announced on August 30th that the signature validation process was ongoing, but that both medical cannabis petitions has collected more than enough signatures for the ballot access. And he has not yet certified the measure for the ballot, which must be done to go to voters on November 5th. And Cohen, through Legrune, requested the signatures on September 3rd. As of Thursday, the filing states Kroon still has not received access to the signatures from 8 counties. The lawsuit cites these forms of invalidities and signatures from people who were not registered voters, whose date of birth did not match their voter registration, or who did not include an address when they signed. Duplicative signatures, as well as signatures collected before the petition circulation officially began last year, or that were collected after July 3rd deadline, and other forms of fraudulent forms of signatures collection, including false notarization. The lawsuit does not specify evidence of a single signee under any of the types of invalid signatures outlined or how many signatories might be thrown out. However, the lawsuit states that Kuhn has good reason to believe that there won't be enough signatures after that process. And that's what he believes anyways. Plaintiff is unable to provide the total number of signatories that are invalid for each of these reasons because the signature pages of the petitions have not been provided, the lawsuit states. And as the signature pages of the petitions continue to be produced, plaintiff anticipates that will invalidate many that will be uncovered. And Attorney General Mike Hilgers announced on Thursday that he's hosting a Friday morning news conference to announce uncovered falsification of voter signatures in the petition process. It was unclear which of these several petitions he planned to discuss, however. The Attorney General's office had no immediate comment on this lawsuit either, and the Nebraska Constitution requires proponents in initiative measures seeking to create new state laws to collect signatures from at least 7% of registered voters. Of those, they must be distributed among 5% of the registered voters in at least 38 of the state's 93 counties. The campaign submitted more than 114,000 signatures on July 3rd for each of its 2 petitions, and in a, quote, unofficial interim results cited in the lawsuit indicate 89,841 valid signatures in 52 validated counties as of September 5th. Cohen evaluated his public records request to Hilgers, and Hilgers is a former lawmaker who also opposed medical marijuana and has led a statewide campaign against Delta 8, which contains THC, the compound in the cannabis plant most commonly associated with someone getting high, you guys. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. The 2024 election cycle marks Nebraskans for medical marijuana's 3rd attempt to qualify for the ballot, beginning back in 2019 after legislative efforts had stalled. And that year, Legrone requested an attorney general's opinion on legislation from Wishart, which stated her legislation would likely be preempted or made moot by federal law prohibiting any form of cannabis. The lawsuit cites that opinion and U.S. Supreme Court precedent, and in May, the federal government officially began what could be a lengthy process to reclassify marijuana from a Schedule I drug on the same level as heroin and LSD, Matthew's favorite drug, to a Schedule III drug on the same level as Tylenol with codeine or ketamine. As of February, 38 states allowed cannabis for medical use, and 24 of those states also legalized for adult use purposes. And according to the Pew Research Center in Washington, D.C., has also legalized both, you guys. Back in 2020, the campaign submitted enough signatures, but the issue did not reach the ballot after a similar challenge from Lancaster County Sheriff Terry Wagner argued the efforts constituted more than one as far as the single subject rule, and the Nebraska Supreme Court agreed in a 5-2 opinion back then. In 2021, separate state-level legislation stalled 31-18, 2 votes short of passage, and the campaign tried again before the 2022 election, but couldn't get enough valid signatures. In September of 2023, the group returned with 2 separate petitions in what it said would be the final attempt, banking on success at the ballot box, you guys. Well, they do say 3rd time's the charm, and I think this is a little late for these guys to be following all of this. And in one other part of this, the lawsuit also alleges that the divided petitions each also violate the single subject rule. On the legalization petition, the lawsuit states it includes whether to legalize the drug and how to protect authorized individuals. And for the regulatory petition, it argues insufficiency because it would legalize the drug and create a new Nebraska Medical Cannabis Commission, and revolves around whether to, in quotes, divest of the legislature of its legislative authority over cannabis, you guys. Nebraska's High Court has taken more stringent view of the single subject requirement when it comes to the ballot measures than to legislatively enacted laws. And two other ballot measures, both related to abortion, also face single subject challenges, and the Supreme Court considered those arguments on Monday and is expected to decide by Friday morning, you guys. Sounds like we're going to have some more news about all of this in the coming weeks, but I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. Why can't they just let the people's voice be heard?
Well, it sounds like the people spoke a little bit late this time, Jason, and it's possible. I'd love to see why this ballot initiative was shot down so many other times. It's possible that they put it in so late because they were hoping that people wouldn't have time to challenge it, which is kind of an issue for them now if that's what the reasoning was, because one of these arguments is that there wasn't time to properly challenge all these signatures. So hopefully it'll pass. We'll see.
But you know, I'm going to push back on that because they filed for this in the time that was allotted for them to submit the signatures. So regardless of all of that, I think it deserves to be on the ballot. I'm
going to volley this back to you and push back again, because when you yes, if I get it at the ask deadline, right? Yes, did I get it in within the allotted amount of time? I sure did. But do I understand that there could be challenges? Do I understand there's supposed to be a regulated amount of time for those challenges to be heard? And if the government, who we know often slow plays things, doesn't meet their burden of time, it still doesn't change the fact that the people who are contesting these initiatives have the right to check all of these signatures, which sucks. I get it. And I think that there's some miserable people in Nebraska where I guess there's not a lot else to do other than try to read down and shoot down signatures for people trying to get access for others. But Jason, if I know that people are going to challenge this and they challenge it every time, I would double check my list. I would triple check it, and I would submit it in plenty of time to make sure that I can throw it in their face. They can check every signature and realize that I have it.
I'm not buying any of that. That's cute that you feel that way.
You're getting better at not arguing, though. I'm proud of you.
I don't know.
An artful deflection, Brother Beck.
I don't know about all that.
Growth and maturation. I love it.
I mean, I'm willing to bet that these prohibitionists actually think that it's actually going to pass, because otherwise they wouldn't be going after it. They just say, you know what, let's let it go to the voters. It's not going to pass. So they're obviously not confident in their voter base turning out for this election. What do you say about that?
I feel it should go to a vote too. You can't just, it's a waste of time, money, government resources to block this kind of stuff 3 times now. Why don't you just let the people decide for themselves? And if that's the initiative or the problem with it, maybe we need to fix that initial problem with giving this much timeline or voter signatures with addresses and such. Most people don't want to sign the paper with their address on it anymore. We have outdated things because of scams and spam and all that kind of stuff. So I think maybe that update of that needs to happen, and that's like a root cause. And if marijuana is going to pass, but the people want it to pass, why can't the state of Nebraska let it pass or fail?
Josh, I would offer it's because Nebraska is run by hardcore right-wing, ultra-conservative Christians. And what we see with hardcore right-wing, ultra-conservative Christians is not only do they want to make choices for themselves, they wish to make choices for everyone else. And I think this is a real warning sign for anybody who wants to enable Don the Con to win, because it's about him.
I don't know about all
it's
that.
It's about the hardcore right-wing Christians backing him.
Whoa.
Their will to control you, your body, and your consciousness.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
This is what it is, you guys.
No, it's not. No, it is not.
Matthew, I'm glad it's Friday.
Again, Jason, an artful deflection, just ignoring a couple millennia of social and political history. The Inquisition.
I will say this to your point, though, that the right-wing conservative Christians, I feel as though, do need to go back and read their Bibles, especially the Old Testament, where it does say that all seed-bearing plants are of this earth and to be used, and so therefore any Christian that is protesting a plant, I think needs to reevaluate their relationship with God. But
Absolutely. And I think they could read a few other places in the Bible as well. But I'm going to push back on Mathieu St. Germain as maybe the least offensive Republican on this show, right? You guys
Whatever.
keep trying to annex me into another party, but, I re-registered again because I moved. So I had to change my registration. It's still Republican.
Yep.
But, I think that we need to make sure that we're looking at that portion of the Bible that says, let he was without sin cast the first stone and things like that. And I don't know that it's necessarily just a conservative thing, because yes, there are a lot of those people who are in the Bible beating conservative side of things, but that's not all of us, and that's unfortunate. And hopefully maybe those of us who are more rational, reasonable, and actual loving adults can get through to some of the yahoos. But if not, listen, hate to be this girl, they'll die off eventually.
I feel like, am I the only person who has dealt with
Too much, Dr. Mark.
the amount of trauma that my friends who are raised by ultra right-wing Christians have gone through? My friends who are raised by Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm the only person who understands the castigation and the being thrown out of the fellowship for untoward behavior, unapproved behavior. Like,
I was thrown out of the. I was
operating
thrown out
in
of the
some
family.
sort of vacuum where we're pretending like this isn't true.
I was
That's
thrown out
all
of
I'm
the
asking.
family. My church that I grew up in, that I led every solo in for my entire life, wouldn't baptize my child. Like,
There you
no,
go.
I understand absolutely. And do you know who I blame? Do I blame an entire movement? No, I blame those assholes who are sitting in their antiquated beliefs and they refuse to evolve. So if there are people on the right that are willing to evolve, let's not bash them. Let's teach.
This is the craziest thing about Christianity and the cognitive dissonance that is taught to people who are raised in Abrahamic religions, divorce their logic circuits from their belief circuits before they really put their logic circuits down around the age of 5, continue to make excuses and exceptions, whereas if you were to look into the book and the dogma and the thousands of year history, it's literally those Christian outposts that are non-dogmatic and are welcoming are literally aberrations that prove the rule. They are exceptions. They are not the mainstream. Why don't we, instead of, it's like the Bible. It's like, oh, the Bible says love everybody. It also says that you should be stoned to death if you wear 2 different fabrics. Right. So if you show up to the meeting with cotton and wool on, we're supposed to stone you to death. And so
it doesn't look good.
Instead of constantly making up stories and excuses, why don't we evolve our consciousness something that more correctly represents how humanity should be treated and treat each other in a one-to-one basis and representation? Again, I do more acid than anybody on here, so I'm probably wrong. Thank you.
No, that's not true, but I'm glad you think I'm exceptional, Mathieu St. Germain. But I will push back on that, and I will say yes, and why don't we, instead of alienate, teach?
Yep.
Oh, shit. Nick Bradley has agreed to a fist fight with the C word at Hall of Flowers. Guys, may I please be the referee?
Hold on. Yes, we got a big old super
martial
chat.
arts and jiu-jitsu referee.
We got a big old super chat. Thank you, the C word. Yeah, Nick Bradley has agreed to a fist fight with me at Hall of Flowers. I'm taking bets. Jesus has my back, by the way. The C word.
Y'all are both
Kumite style with the broken glass on the knuckles.
I'm here for this. We're gonna have to make sure that that Nick has the proper head protection on, though, if he's gonna.
I'm gonna take the straight bet that they're both getting kicked the hell out of Hall of Flowers.
I mean, I heard Dr. Gene Talleyrand is gonna be the referee of this match.
And in the right corner, we have.
God, Rastafari, what happened to one love? I am not.
Yeah.
But they're bald heads, Dr. Talleyrand, so does that count?
Shave your head, join the clan.
And while we're still waiting on Rico, I do want to introduce Chris Hadala just joined us, who is the CEO of Pro Verde Labs out on the East Coast, and want to welcome him to coming on. And I feel like we should roll right into your story, Mathieu St. Germain. First,
hey,
yeah, I feel like we're gonna roll right into, that's right, the immortal Count himself, Mr. Mathieu St. Germain, the man who's been walking on this planet for thousands upon thousands of years and still needs to regain his marbles. That's right. It is none other than the Count himself, Mr. Mathieu St. Germain.
Thank you, Brother Jason, other kind co-hosts and correspondents. Happy Friday to everybody out there. I hope I am either the most loved or the most hated person on the High at 9 News. That's what I'm going for. So we'll just keep trying. Cheer me on.
With that.
A smoke One Bay Area doctor says you should never use pot vapes. I was hoping Yarrow was going to be on this so we could have an intervention. He is a paper and hardware judge for the Emerald Cup. Yes, sir. Somebody text him so he can catch up with this. Dr. Lori Volan has been encouraging cannabis for decades, recommending thousands of her patients smoke marijuana to treat a wide range of conditions. Berkeley medical doctor has a simple message for all of us. Someone asks her if they should use cannabis vape cartridges. Don't do it. Volan has been critical of cannabis vapes for years, pointing to evidence that the cartridges can expose users to heavy metals. Have never been evaluated for long-term health effects. Concern increased this year after a pesticide scandal swept through the cannabis industry. Vape cartridges sold in California's legal store testing positive for pesticides. Cannabis vape cartridges have become an almost irresistible product for cannabis users over the past decade. They can fit in your pocket, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they light on fire for no reason, etc. Consumers clearly enjoy the products. California sold nearly $100 million worth of these hot dogs of the cannabis industry just last year. 2021 study that tested legal vapes. Washington found that heavy metals can leach from the cartridge components into vapor that is inhaled from the end of the vaporizer, exposing users directly to potentially toxic heavy metals. Additionally, there are concerns about the oil in which the extraction that makes these the THC percentage go up from 20 to 30% to sometimes above 90% also concentrate pesticides. In response to SF Gate questions, the DC admitted in February that the state's own labs were unable to perform the state-mandated pesticide tests for legal products. David Hafner, a DC spokesperson, said in February that the agency would be able to test all products. Shortly, the agency confirmed to SF Gate last month that it still lacked the ability to test for all pesticides. 4 months after SF Gate's report on the contaminated products still being for sale, the LA Times published an investigation that found 25 different legal vape pens were contaminated with pesticides. In addition to some of the pens testing positive for one of the 66 chemicals banned by the state, the report also found abundant evidence that some vape pens contain pesticides that the state does not require testing for. In other words, a vape cartridge could pass state-required testing and still contain dangerous chemicals. Those chemicals are not among the 66 listed. LA Times found in particular 16 of the 25 products contain pymetrozine, a pesticide the EPA has determined is likely a carcinogen that leads to liver tumors in experiments with rodents and other animals. Canada has banned the pesticide from being used on vegetables, and so has the EU. California's tests for cannabis do not require evaluating for pymetrozine. While the DCC flounders, some retailers are choosing not to wait for the state to act. Loudest voice so far has been Elliot Lewis, outspoken CEO of Catalyst, one of the state's largest retail cannabis chains. Lewis declined to be interviewed for this story, but has documented his business operations through a constant stream of posts and videos in which he paints an alarming image of what is being sold on retail shelves. Lewis said in one August video that he was inspired to increase pesticide scanning of Catalyst products because he didn't get in this game to be part of some system that's slanging poison, even if it's off panel. In other words, one of California's mandatory testing toxins. It's not a minority of product. Lewis launched a new testing program for vape cartridges called Cat 4 at his stores this summer. He's testing the products on the shelves and requiring that vape producers pass this new expanded pesticide screening in order to be on the shelves. Hey, this name sounds familiar. Josh Schweider, an analytical chemist and the co-founder of Infinite Chemical Analysis Lab, a certified testing lab in San Diego, added an email to SF Gate that in a recently tested batch of 183 cannabis vape cartridges pulled from store shelves, 30%, 1/3 tested positive for pymetrozine, which means levels were too small for the lab to quantify, but it was in there. Over 18% tested positive for significant levels of this insecticide. LA Times even found the chemical in one vape produced by Stizzy, the most wide-selling vape company in the state. Stizzy has never denied that its vapes contain pesticide, including after 2 requests for comments from SF Gate. Instead, on both occasions, Christina Alford, a spokesperson for Stizzy, has replied only by saying Stizzy follows all California laws, and they're only in it for the money, so fuck you. Olin is unconvinced. He said cannabis smoking has already been well studied through decades of research and has recently found it doesn't lead to cancer or other serious health problems. For her, the choice for users is clear. There's no reason to use vape cartridges if you can use the flower itself. There's absolutely no reason. Olin recently told SF Gate. Just smoke. I think this is a really important story, and I'm great Josh is here and Chris, and I'm really looking forward to what you all and the doctors have to add to this. For myself, Mathieu St. Germain, I find when I smoke vapes, I tend to feel an ungrounded and more anxiety-ridden high, and I also find that ease of use leads to me smoking a lot more than I normally would I have to roll up a joint or find a bong or a pipe. That being said, take it away, panel. This is St. Germain for the High at 9 News on a Friday.
Definitely a lot to unpack in there.
Yes. And Josh, you were mentioned in this article, and I would encourage everyone also to check out your episode on Catalyst TV, where you go into a deep detail with this with Mr. Elliot Lewis on that, and so do want to encourage everyone to check that episode out as well.
Definitely. I mean, when we even look at this or talk about this, the 66 pesticides regulated in California doesn't mean they're legally to be used either. I think everyone should understand that. You can't apply any of those 66 pesticides to cannabis. You just have a checking and an action level that they're qualifying it for. It doesn't mean the application is allowed. Years ago, I've been talking with this for a long time and running expanded screens to see if people just veered away from the 66 pesticides being tested, and lo and behold, they have. So what we did is we have a panel of about 350 pesticides. We'll keep continuing it to 625s here soon, and screening shelves to see what the problem is. Like that pymetrazine thing, that's a shiny object in the sky because it's such high concentration. So out of that, I mean, the 100 or LOQ are below, and then 100 parts per billion is 24% of the whole shelf, and then 18.3%, I believe, was over 1 part per million. That's kind of like an application basis in a concentrate. That means it was applied to cannabis at some time during the lifetime of it. It's been a whirlwind of people denying it. It's like a acceptance of it, and then admitting they're using it now. It seems like it's heavily in the supply around California. There are other pesticides too. I mean, the current study, the list now be identified. It keeps growing, the current study, but it's hundreds and hundreds of samples. We have about 54 pesticides detected off list in California, not just the 66, ranging from concentrations of 10 parts per billion to, I think the highest pesticide concentration thus found so far is 126 parts per million. So this is getting to percentile. All this stuff is very interesting, that you can't spray it on these, and any of these pesticides cannot be applied to cannabis, and it's a law, and that should be regulated by the DPR in California or other states with similar things. But that's as far as the California extended pesticide.
Josh, do you know what it's approved for? Like, is it approved for other agricultural crops in California, which is what's bringing it in to Cali, and there's just a supply of it? So they're like, oh, we got chewers and we got bugs, so we're going to spray this.
Well, yeah,
that's where you get
a lot of this too could be from spray over from other farms that are producing other crops, right?
Not at this level, though, right, Josh? Would you say?
So it depends on the level. So the less than LOQ stuff in a concentrate, or stuff under 100 parts per billion, would be like the overspray environmental contamination used on the farm previously. I like to call it environmental contamination. It could be any of those. When you start getting a half a part per billion or above, that's getting to application. A part per million, that's why I kind of put those percentages out there. That means it was applied to that flower at some time. Well, you're saying 18% is being applied. It is used. It's used in onions as a intended use. There's a lot of regulations on it. I believe a part per million in onions is acceptable. After that, it's not. And then other agricultural products are a lot lower limits. EU has 20 parts per billion limit of pymetrazine in any commercial product, and then that's why it's banned. But you can look this. You can look it up. There's a lot of details on pesticide data sheets. EPA website has a lot of data out there. Get lost in it from here.
And you should be certifying all your employees within 60 days of them touching any plant or being in any area that will ever at any point in their tenure be tested. Sorry, I teach that class too, because there are a lot of things that are allowed for use in your cannabis garden, but not as a foliar. And these people don't understand that. Like, we're not just putting our consumer at risk, we're putting our employees at risk. When you come home as a parent, what's the first thing your kids do? Run and grab you, right? that cute little baby is grabbing all that spray over everything that you just applied that day at work or everything that you brushed up against. Like, we need to be more conscious. You need to make sure you're mitigating soil if you're going to grow in native soil. You need to make sure that you're mitigating these nice greenhouses that are super old that you're taking over because the Central Coast has moved their flower production down to South America. Like, these are things that need to be tested. You need to test the carts that you're going to fill before you're going to fill them, to make sure that there's no spray over from pesticides that were applied before they were shipped over to keep mosquitoes and things down. Like, there are so many touch points that need to be tested. And here's the unfortunate part for operators. Yes, you are in a place where you're supposed to be providing safe product to consumers. That means these are going to get expensive for testing to you. And also, labs are only going to test for what you tell them to test for. And that's unfortunate that is the way it is when operators are looking at it and they just don't want to know, because they do have to pay for every test, which sucks because the lab has to pay for every test. So if you're truly here to produce something that is safe and effective for your consumers, then you're going to have to pay a little bit more and you're going to have to eat that bottom line a little bit.
Not all operators only test what they're paid to test. Some don't, and that'd be like me. I do a lot of extensive testing on the back end. I probably paid more money out of my own personal pocket to prove these points, to show a flaw in the system, and hopefully it can get corrected.
Do you have any?
Chris does it as well.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on this, Chris, or anything you'd like to add on this?
So Massachusetts has such a horrible stance on pesticides. We only test for 9, which gives growers like this huge opportunity to use many things that are off the list of 9. When we have reported pesticides outside of the 9, we get called into the office, like the principal's office, by the CEO and say, take this off our COA or we will never test with you and we're going to blackball you in the industry, which happens. It's very hard to try and be an ethical, honest lab. When we report pesticides to our regulators, guess who gets investigated? We do. They come and they want us to track by video, time and date stamp and person who handled it, and literally thousands of pages of documentation they want provided, rather than investigating where it came from. When a single producer has 15 out of 16 samples with significant hits of the same pesticide, which we don't have in our facility other than reference mixes, which are mixes of multiples, 30, 40, 50 pesticides in a mix. There's no way we could contaminate with one. So pesticides it's not our biggest problem. Microbial testing is probably our biggest challenge in Massachusetts, but pesticides are certainly a challenge.
Yeah, I think if you look behind the curtain, Chris, the pesticides might be the biggest problem.
Hey, Chris and Josh.
Let's just talk about the vape pen for a second. So, like, the vape pen hardware is pretty categorically coming out of the People's Republic of China. And any shiny metal, could be basically contaminated with what are the 4 lead, mercury,
Cadmium.
Cadmium, right? So,
Nickel.
So like, I know Amber's study, which was really enlightening, that I guess the extract itself, what sits in the tank of the vape cart, can basically start leaching metals into the oil itself to create some kind of, I guess, organometallic complex that you then would be consuming when you use that vape pen. So really, I mean, where do you begin there? I mean, the supply chain is in a place where metal recycling is done in cooking kitchens, right? I mean, I don't exactly know if there's a tractable supply chain that's not going to be contaminated with heavy metals, but I'd be interested in what Josh and Chris have to say on this.
I mean, I'll start, Chris. This has been a thing going on for years. I remember 10 years ago, people were starting to put things in vape pens and test it in the California system, and you would see a lot of contamination of heavy metals. And the producers know it. So you have a dichotomy of actors of producers making cleaner vape pens or things that don't leach metals, and then the ones that do. So we, over the years, have done a lot of back end studies on vape pens, looking at them being heated or not heated and filled, and just kind of looked at your leaching studies of the metals. Normally we just stuck to the 4, and I've always questioned why we stick on 4, and it's the same type of thing. I mean, the FDA, I believe, has action levels set for inhalable metals for 18 of them. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can find that paper, but we should be looking at other ones. But over the years, we have seen the vape carts, at least in the state of California, produce less and less metals being leached out of them, and it's because of the quality manufacturers. So I try not to throw everyone in the same bucket. You do have people making vape pens and actually doing these studies, and I have conducted them for vape pen manufacturers that do batch testing. We fill it with oil, known pre-test oil, look for metals, fill it, eat it really hot, let it sit there for a month, 2 months, test it again, see if we're getting any leaching metals out of it. We've had stuff where we will get it igniting and smoking, and then do the same, or vaping and same thing, and test the bulk oil. We've done studies with vaporizer, iron lungs, and catching the vapor coming through and checking for metal analysis as well. So there is again, the story kind of sums it up one way, but I believe there are people doing it right out there. But at the same time, you will still find vape pens out there that are just leaching metals. And the old game in the testing world used to be, I'll fill the vape pens, you come over 2 hours later, pick up vape pen, test. You only have 1 day to test. If not, don't test for me, because they know what's happening after a week or a month that it would actually fail for testing. That's a lot. That's just like 8 years ago this used to happen.
Guess we shouldn't have removed all those tariffs on China.
Yeah, it seems to me that sampling is the elephant in the room. If when it comes to vape pens or even flower, plant sampling method is not addressed, and we've seen variants, at least with THC content, and maybe even with pesticides and others, of 25-50% on the same plant. So, how much do you guys think sampling is an issue?
Sampling is a major issue. You should sample in the final product, and then it should be taken off shelf. There should be checks off shelf. I mean, I understand with the plant, you can go find the worst bud and the best bud, but have you ever done that study looking at THC numbers on packaged product? As in, like, I've done this, and I've conducted my own studies. The Beard Bros were a 3-part series about this when California did the THC potency and method. And we've tested product where we took the product from a licensed manufacturer and actually sampled it properly. 3 months later, we went and found at 5 different locations flour on the shelf, bought a package of it in 8, since you don't buy one bed, homogenized each package, and they all show less than 4% deviation. So, I mean, I've done this multiple times. So, I don't understand. I understand the argument. It's the counter argument that gets made when people are making excuses to why their numbers are varying so much. That's just my opinion.
Well, could it also be part of the fact that some of your competition is allowing people to send in through the mail their compliant samples instead of actually adhering to that chain of custody?
In California, I mean, there's a lot of things going on in California that are.
I know.
Some of them I can't comment on because there's lawsuits.
I'm going to ask about them. That's kind of my job. I'm going to ask about them anyway.
Fair enough. We are going way over time, you guys. This is great having you guys wealth and knowledge, Chris and John. We really appreciate having you guys here, and thank you, Dr. Mark, for arranging all of this this morning. And we're going to go to a commercial, and we are going to be right back. I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's Joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi. Stop whatever you're doing. Make sure that you smash that like button. I know you'll appreciate it, we'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.high9news.com in just about a couple of hours. Also, just one quick note, everyone, please mark your calendars for Friday, October 18th. We are going to be going into overtime. We're going to have the doctors from Abstracts, and we're going to be discussing all of the science and research that they are doing, and hopefully we'll have our panel still here and really get a deep dive, and we will do a question and answers. As you can just type it in the chat, and we will, the doctors will answer your questions and whatnot, and researchers. And so we hope to see you on our overtime on October 18th, Friday. The Network Show is coming back to LA September 18th and 19th. Make sure to get your tickets now for the only B2B licensed flower trade show in LA. With its previous shows selling out, you'll want to act fast so you don't miss out on over 150 of the best brands and distributors throughout California. The Network Show captures and ensures an intimate, focused environment for California's most influential brands and retailers to join forces in the true spirit of the legacy operator. So head over to www.networkshow.co/ticketing to reserve your spot and start cultivating connections at this year's Network Show. I guess we're back. We are back, you guys. Coming up next is Dr. Mark Scialdone out from the great state of Vermont, where he's a chemist, and he's even found individual compounds that are all brand new to the cannabis scene. That's right. It is the papa of them all. That's right. Mr. Dr. Mark Scialdone.
Thank you, Jason. Happy Friday, everybody.
Yes,
here from the home office on the shores of Lake Champlain. We're so thrilled today to have Chris Fidala, Dr. Chris Fidala, and Josh Swider from, Josh is from Infinity Labs out in San Diego, and Chris is from Verde, right down the road from me here in Massachusetts. And so we're going to talk about an article today that was published in CNE News. CNE News is the weekly magazine for the American Chemical Society. And let's see, American Chemical Society is a professional society of chemists. I think there's about 180,000 people worldwide that basically see this publication. So, and it got on the cover, which I think is pretty important. So that means it's a pretty important issue that they want to bring to the attention of chemists all around the world. And so the title of this article is Shopping Around for Favorable Cannabis Testing Labs. So a phenomena that we've covered here on the High at 9 News before. So a phenomena called lab shopping. And I'm just going to read a brief because it's quite a long article, but it's an article that quotes both Chris Fidala and Josh. So we'd like to have you guys chime in on what the essence of this article is, and really so our listeners can understand what the issue is when it comes to testing. I think a lot of people just like to throw testing under the bus, but we all know that, testing in a regulated environment is extremely important. And being able to establish reproducibility from lab to lab is perhaps at the fundamental issue here. So the brief of the article reads like this. Laboratories licensed to test cannabis in markets regulated by the U.S. states claim that they're losing customers to competitors willing to provide favorable results. The lab shopping, quote unquote, problem began with when labs started inflating THCA levels. That's the cannabinoid that's found in the plant and is the acid form of THC that's expressed in cannabis flower. But labs say they have evidence suggesting that competitors are also overlooking molds and pesticides, a little bit that we just touched on, thus allowing contaminated products to reach consumers. Regulators in some states are addressing fraudulent test results better than those in other states. A handful of states are opening up reference labs, so that's kind of like a state reference lab to kind of check up on these labs to help with investigations, but most facilities are slow getting up and running, and quite frankly, they're not very profitable if they're turning out real results, but they're losing business to other labs who are faking those results. So labs that play by the rules are tired of waiting for regulators to address what they say is now a public health issue. And I like to start with Josh, because Josh, one of the things I found from reading this is that the Cannabis Control Board in California got sick of listening to you, and that you just went ahead and contacted Gavin Newsom directly in order to get some action done. So first of all, that takes a lot of balls. Congratulations on that. But man, so did that really was the view worth the climb on that?
I think it all is. I mean, about 2 years ago, I kind of got fed up with keep repeating myself and keep screaming in the background at the wall, aka the DCC, and supplying information, asking them to come shut my lab down because I must be this wrong in this industry, or that you have to do something to correct an industry. So after a lot of fails on the shelf, this goes back to the LA Times timeline of that. This was even the 66 pesticides. I mean, we had like 250,000 SKUs on shelf in a 60-day period that failed horribly for pesticide contamination, like some of them up to 2,000 times the action level set out by the state, sitting on shelves, being sold widely, and reporting it to the DCC, and then no action happens because they don't have an internal testing lab. Spent hundreds of hours giving data packages and other things, kind of like Chris was talking about, looking at the data. And then after I started a countdown on some of these, like this was reported on this day, and then I had a spreadsheet that showed like, hey, 152 days has been passed since it was reported to you, and there's no action taken. And I sent a strong word letter over to him, as well as a lot of their staff, and it kind of showed the spreadsheet, and then we're starting to see a change in the industry. This isn't to attack any one person or anything else. This is to keep the public safe as we're consuming cannabis, and we want to set these regulations out there. So that was the big push on Newsom reaching out. Some people call it stupid. Some people call it balls. You can call it what you want.
Interesting.
Well, at least you got someone's attention. I mean, I think that, again, I'm not sure that the ban that he threw down last week isn't at all related, but Chris, you and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, the whole prohibition, the existence of prohibition has basically created a black market everywhere. And yeah, like all these folks who are doing CBD conversion over to make a cheap version of THC, this so-called hemp-derived THC, has really kind of upset the regulated cannabis market, because these folks are operating outside a regulated environment, basically doing active pharmaceutical ingredient synthesis.
Yeah, so they started with CBD conversions, and when that became palatable to the public to have synthetic or what they call semi-synthetic cannabinoids, they started to push the limits, and so now we see a lot of the products that are labeled as hemp derivatives are not derivatives of hemp in any way. Things like THCP or HHCP do not have a pathway from any constituents in hemp. So these are pure designer drugs. I'm not opposed to them, but they should be done in a very different manner. These should be done more in a pharmaceutical manner. The levels of contamination that we see in these products is exactly 100%. It's not 99.9. We see contaminated product all the time. Most of these contaminants are unknown in toxicity, so we don't know what we're dosing the public with. And the thing is, what I guess is most frustrating for me is I spent the last 11 years fighting for cannabis, to legalize cannabis, to educate about cannabis and cannabis analytics. And here we have people who are doing chemistry in their garage and basement under the cloak of hemp industry. They're not the hemp industry. They're not even the cannabis industry, and they're taking our reputation down, as well as a lot of the hard work that we've been doing to justify and to promote cannabis use and consumption, both at the medicinal level and for adult use consumption.
And I want to bring up one thing too, that this material is being brought into the cannabis industry too. So I have a certified method with the state of Michigan to determine if Delta 9 THC came from a marijuana plant, a hemp plant, or if it was synthetically derived in a laboratory. The last runs in Michigan, the last one that ended 2 days ago, a study, 60% of the samples were conversion. The one before that, about a month before that, 43.8. That was from 50 samples. Wow. The one before that was a couple hundred, and it was about 30% were actually synthetic. So the marijuana industry is selling synthetic cannabinoids as marijuana to unknowing and unwilling participants in a lab study.
So what it's really come down to, I've talked about this on High at 9 before, which is that it is cheaper to convert CBD. Now CBD is tanked to like a $250 a kilo. You could convert CBD into Delta 9, what they think is clean Delta 9, cheaper almost by a factor of 10 than getting a cannabis license, growing cannabis plants, extracting them, refining those extracts. To get the same molecule of THC, you're going to spend 10 times the amount of money. So it is literally the proverbial race to the bottom. And all of these hemp-derived beverages, where you have like 10 milligrams of THC, hemp-derived THC in a beverage. Josh, you and I talked about this, right? You could still, even at that dilution, still verify that THC came from a chemical conversion of CBD and not from extraction, right?
Yeah, hemp. I can determine if it's hemp, marijuana, or cannabis, even at the beverage. There's concentration stuff that you do. That is a good point, though. It is cheaper to make it, but the problem is that you talk to people actually manufacture. Again, I'll say it again: negative trans Delta 9, which they're trying to manufacture as their analyte of interest. The expensive step is not the creation of it; it's the cleanup. So your price goes from $250 production. So most CBD is being shipped in from China now, synthetically made and grown on hemp plants. The amount of hemp plants grown in the United States is below the amount before the Farm Bill even took effect.
That's true.
So it's not even growing CBD in the United States anymore. It's being shipped in 55-gallon drums, converted into Delta 9 poorly, with up to 60 byproducts. I'm finding them over 0.1%, which would be a good pharmaceutical limit to set on byproducts and conduct a safety study and efficacy study on these byproducts. So the problem is they're skipping the last step of cleaning it up. So you can't actually produce a product in the manner that you're talking about for that cheap of a price, because you need to do the cleanup step. And I keep pushing people to do it. We don't even screen for the right processing chemicals. We don't look at the byproducts, and we don't look at you can look at the different enantiomers, but in the stereochemistry. But I think you're good on that as far as safety.
Yes.
You got
Yeah, so based on the cost of CBD right now, and let's say most beverages are a 5 milligram dose, the cost of production without cleanup for the Delta 9 that's going into these beverages is 0.16 cents. 0.16 cents of that cost is Delta 9, and then they're selling the beverage for $6 to $8. Your marketing in your can costs way more than the Delta 9 that's going into it. So as Josh says, if you're not cleaning up is the expensive, time-consuming step. There is no requirement in any state to not poison people with these. That's ironic.
Chris, then too, if you think of it, if you do use hemp extracted Delta 9, if you don't want to do mother liquor, if there really is, and we don't want to go into that, the price difference, it would jump it up from 0.01 cents to like 0.02 cents or something, right? Or 0.03, right?
It goes to from hemp distillate, it's 6 cents per dose. And to do it from marijuana is 8 cents per dose.
Well, I guess we save a penny, a couple pennies.
So it's all about profit,
That's
right?
Why.
Well, so the other kicker is that let's say you're doing this in a state-regulated program. The producer is paying probably $50,000 to $100,000 a year in licensing fees, inspection fees, insurance. There's a lot of expense that's associated with regulatory production of cannabis. These guys that are doing these conversions, sometimes in their garage and basement, or they're basically unregulated production, they're not even paying the state cannabis taxes. So taxes oftentimes can be 25%. Mm-hmm. You can buy these products sometimes without paying any tax.
Well, because a lot of people are, let's be real, the operators are buying these products from the illicit market. They're not buying them from a place where they're going to be paying taxes. And like, let's be honest, I do a lot of sourcing for these people. I've also done sales consulting for labs, one of which I saw on your lawsuit, which was really disappointing because they were very much struggling because they had at that point in time a lab director who was very, very, very strong-headed and wanted to be completely honest, which is why I come in, because I'm selling on relationships, not the fact that, whatever. And also they were slow, so the turnaround time was a little better. But, it's a little disappointing to see. Let's not pretend like these operators don't know what they're doing. Let's not push back. I don't know. Where do you think the burden finally lies? Right? Is it with the labs that aren't being operating with integrity? Is it with the operators who know what the hell they're doing? Is it a combination of both? And I don't know how much we can get into the lawsuit, but, is there a monetary damage sought in that lawsuit? And what is the basis on that? Is it, I know this is awesome. I appreciate anybody who fights back and says what needs to be said, despite whoever has a bad opinion about it. I don't know what my thumbs up, thumbs down's going crazy, but all right, we're doing it today. I definitely, that's one of the reasons why people dislike me, but I appreciate you, Josh, for saying what needs to be said. But is there a monetary value sought in connection to that, or is it truly just for public safety?
It's,
No
I mean,
disrespect.
so, okay. For me personally, there's no monetary role in doing this. It's to correct an industry so a safe product makes it to the consumers. Is there a monetary value in a lawsuit? Yes. I'm not going to lie on that. That's how lawsuits work. You can't just sue people to correct it.
Sue for $1.
Yeah. There's no monetary value attached to it now. So there's a lot of things going on with that. And I think the onus is you have a lot of different actors in it that could be held accountable for it. You could have labs, you could have producers, you could have a lot of different people. But overall, I believe that labs should be that safety gatekeeper to the general public. My customer is not the one who pays me. My customer is the general public. And if we're going to sit there past tests or falsify results, knowingly, unknowingly, either way, that's still called lab fraud. I don't care if, hey, I don't know how to run a lab, but I'm running one. That's called lab fraud. You should not be doing that. So I think that we'll stand up, and I know there's a lot of people in this industry that have left the industry that are the actual chemists because we can't compete in this industry with actually using chemistry and getting it accurate and precise answers. But then we end up leaving the industry because we can't compete against the guy pressing a button that doesn't know what the button does.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answered all your questions.
No, you covered it, and I appreciate that. I was just, those are my own curiosities because I've seen how some of these sales programs work, and I think it's disgusting to sell false test results, especially if those are fails for something that's potentially dangerous, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very much so. Very much. Dr. T, did you have anything that you wanted to ask on this?
Yeah, I'm sort of also thinking about the consumer and wondering, what can they buy? Is it that they just grow a plant in their backyard? Should they only buy flowers? It seems to me that anything extracted can be also converted without a clear line of that. And so I'm worried about any vape cart, gummy, anything that's being produced out there.
So that's what I tell people.
Yes,
Not
sir.
everyone is a bad actor, or the people doing this are slipping something under someone's nose. You got to find the trusted companies. The companies out there doing going above and beyond to do the testing. I have people in California that test every batch for conversion. I have people testing extended pesticide testing with every batch to make sure they're not contaminating the product. And they'll gladly throw away these products or not put them on the shelf if it fails any of these things. Those are the people that should be like leading the charge in this industry. I think you're seeing a change in California, and I've been doing this for a long time in California. The light got pretty dim, and people like Elliot Lewis stepping up and taking a stance on this with the voice he has. I appreciate that kind of stuff. Thomas Martin from Raw Gardens out there saying a lot of things too. These are people that are leading a charge in a movement in an industry to create a safe product again, and we're getting away from just the ultimate dollar, making a dollar everywhere, and looking at this. Like I said, I've donated more time and service to this industry than any other lab that I know personally. And I'll say, yeah, I've done that. And Chris, I'm not taking it for you. Chris, you do a lot of stuff too. And I'm talking about California.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
So,
go ahead, please, Chris.
So I'll ask Josh, why is it on us to foot the bill for this? Like you, we do our own secret shopper. We provide free yeast and mold testing for anyone in the state of Massachusetts, whether it's producer, retailer, home grower, patient. Because yeast and mold is so prevalent in Massachusetts regulated retail, we offer anyone free yeast and mold testing. And 50 to 60% of the products that are purchased in retail that we've tested, it's not a huge data set, but 50 to 60% are contaminated with failing levels of mold.
I 100% agree. I just did a microbe study in Michigan. I had 33% fail on shelf the other day. Mm-hmm. The onus shouldn't be on us. The onus is on us because we care too much, I think, and we have scientific integrity, and we care about the final product of these patients. I think the onus goes back to the states, the state-run labs, the state regulators. They need to do a better job at what they're doing. And I'm not trying to bash anyone out there or any one person or department, but we need to step it up. There needs to be regulatory action. They need to do the shelf testing and things like that, because it can't be on people like me and Chris. I did that pesticide study because I know what's going on, just from being in the industry too long, and I'm kind of sick of being quiet. I've been out trying to get someone to be involved in that for years, and no one wanted to. And this is a common practice done by states in all sorts of industries. You know, Washington State does this pesticide screening all the time, actively. They're screening off lists for very large lists of pesticides in the cannabis market to make sure people aren't using it. But for some reason, not all states are doing the same thing. And I think that's the thing. The onus shouldn't be on us. But I mean, people will say, why do I take it upon myself? I take it upon myself because I think this industry needs to change if it wants to stay. I think this industry is a very important industry. I think cannabis should be legal and everyone should be able to consume it. But at the same time, someone consuming safe cannabis under the false pretenses that it's safe cannabis and then ends up dying at an early age because they're consuming it is not appropriate. And that's what that kind of drives me to do this kind of stuff.
And I appreciate you doing that work. I think that's super commendable, and I think that's awesome. And I hope you weren't offended by my questions. How far do we push this onus, though? Like, why do I test this? Because I think that's great that you guys are willing to do the other work, right? Until the state's like, you know what, fuck it. We'll just take over all the labs. So the federal government comes in when we have a federal policy finally in the year 2097 or whatever it's going to actually happen. And they're just like, you know what, we'll control all the lab testing. Everything will be a state-owned and sponsored lab.
I don't think it'll happen. I don't think they want that responsibility. I don't think states want more responsibility to tell the truth, especially state testing.
Especially when they're not taking any responsibility for what they're doing now.
Exactly.
Yeah, Chris points out in the article, I'll quote you here, Chris. I provided to our Cannabis Control Commission on the order of thousands of data points that would indicate fraud, malfeasance, and incompetence. And what did they do? What did the state of Massachusetts do about that, Chris?
Nothing to date. We're waiting years to see action. And let me go back to that quote. One of the things that can be very difficult, and I think Josh alluded to this, sometimes the difference between fraud and malfeasance and incompetence, it's very gray, and it's hard to distinguish whether something's intentional. But as Josh said, it's still fraud if you're incompetent. If you're incompetent and you're running a lab, that's still fraud.
It's kind of like,
I think the people running Massachusetts is also pretty incompetent as well, because I think they're a little too busy trying to defend that lady's job than worry about actually correcting those issues that you brought to her.
That's been the most troublesome thing working in these regulatory. A public safety problem should take first place. I'm worried that we're going to clog up supply chains, or this is not going to make the product. Why can't we do regulatory holds on products till investigations are finished instead of selling it through on a shelf? So that's utterly insane to me. There's a lot of proof and evidence out there, that reporting and all this stuff that we've been doing for years. And I would like to see some kind of regulatory change. Why the government won't take this on? It's a lot of work. I think they will leave the labs, but they just need to regulate it better. I mean, most industries are tested by independent testing labs. The thing about this industry is what I've seen troubling too is the analytical industry. Normally, when you're running a testing lab, you get scrutinized by your customer. Your scrutiny is, hey, let's see your SOP. Let's make sure it's up. You do yearly visits up to them, and you're making sure that we're keeping control of what we're doing, and you're grading us on how well we do our job. In the cannabis industry over the years, it was quite the opposite. How poorly are you doing your job, and then I'll go ahead and use you. And that's what we've seen in the past.
I'd like to interject with a quick political digression.
Oh, boy.
It's great once again to see my friend Socialist Jenny advocating for government regulation and control of an industry.
Not advocating for it at all. I'm not advocating for it at all. I'm saying,
it's 100%
is there a point where we push
out of
too much,
line
they're
with
like,
the
fuck it, we'll do
GOP.
it.
I have a real
100%
question.
out of line with the GOP platform of government deregulation and allowing corporations to do whatever they want to us, including ending the USDA, FDA,
boy.
the EPA.
I'm down with ending the
Project
FDA.
2025 crew has written out in plain black and white
Project
letters.
25
if Trump gets
2024
elected,
is not any
gonna
part
try
of the
to
Trump
end the
agenda, bro.
EPA.
Stop spreading that ridiculous.
boy,
and
my
it's all environmental
Stop it.
regulations
Stop the-
pointed
stop the
at
cap.
corporations to keep Americans safe.
Stop the cap.
Love you
We
guys.
As much as you want,
put
Matthew,
him
this
back in
dress
his
is
box.
lilac, not purple. So you're not going to pull me over, but I appreciate you mixing my words.
I don't need
for
to
your
pull you
own-
over, Jenny. I'm just
your
pointing
own-
out your
I'm
socialist
just a
ideals
good
and
person.
propositions.
That's okay. It's
Oh,
okay to be a good
boy.
person, an
Oh,
asshole,
boy.
and a Republican all at the same time.
That's right.
I think Jenny's stance is really in line with the Scandinavian social democracies of Norway.
I think we're distracting from the fact that we have really great
Matthew
brains
St.
on
Germain,
the
I
show
have
right
a
now.
real question for Chris. I have a serious question for Chris.
Go for it, Jay.
Yes. So, Chris, you stated earlier that 100% of the products that you tested that are of the hemp-derived cannabinoids tested dirty or didn't pass or were fails or however you want to word that. How many products like that have you actually tested? And were they a range of all different types of products, or was it just within one particular demographic like vape carts or gummies or something?
Yeah, so I would say it's probably close to 5,000 products. Some of them are, I would say the majority of them are finished consumer products, but we do have a lot of examples where these are raw ingredients. So oftentimes producers of these distillates are selling them to people who are then making gummies in final form, and they're unaware that they're heavily contaminated. Typically, we see up to 35 different synthetic byproducts. It's not uncommon to see 35. We've seen contamination levels that is, I think, 47 or 50% of the product was the highest level of contamination. So when you're smoking on a Delta 8 vape pen, that is 47% not Delta 8, and it's probably ISO THC. This was before we knew what the ISOs were, of unknown toxicity. You know, I did not coin the term Frankenoid, but we talk about this as Frankenoid roulette. The chance is these products will not kill you. There's a significant chance that they won't kill you.
Harley.
Interesting.
I think too, Chris, back to the 47% stuff, a lot we've seen is fillers. So like vitamin E acetate was that big, was that really popular, but there's a lot of other ones being used. I've done a study in multiple states and with the hemp industry. I still today find product on the shelf in the hemp industry that's 50% vitamin E acetate a day. It's crazy.
Yep.
Fair enough. Man, this has been fascinating. Anyone else have anything else that they would like to ask the doctors in regards to this and the lab technicians while they're here?
I just want to thank Chris and Josh for coming on today
Most
and joining
definitely.
and providing such great color to this article.
I do have a quick question.
Thank you, guys.
Does anyone know of a vape manufacturer that is located in the United States and uses U.S. sourced inputs to manufacture U.S.-made vape carts?
No.
I'm not aware of any.
Yeah, there are none.
Sounds like a great business opportunity.
The
Let's do it.
problem with that,
One could just
the problem with
one
that,
could
though,
educate the
Matthew St. Germain?
customers that the slight higher cost would be offset by a much greater chance of safety and that might be a pain point solution for business.
Probably not. I mean, let's be real. They're not going to pay more, and they don't care to.
Exactly. They're not going to want to pay for that. The cost of labor is far too expensive in the U.S. for that type of production work.
Well, that's
Some
because
people will pay more for well-made
for...
USA-made products, such as people like myself. I always buy Sharpies over other pens, even though they cost more. I always buy USA-made knives,
I'm so
even if they
excited.
cost more.
He's advocating for tariffs, you guys, so we can't ship all this business to China.
I'm not advocating for tariffs.
Yes,
I'm
you
advocating
are.
for U.S. manufacturing.
Yes, you are, because we know that a lot of these. No, we know that U.S. businesses are often not going to make these purchases because they're more expensive. So how do we shut that down? We make tariffs so that we can't send money to non-ethical Chinese People's Republic, People's whatever of China. Manufacturer. Sorry, I got a little excited,
I'm against tariffs, but I am pro USA manufacturing. I actually almost opened a store at the mall called the Made in the USA store.
You're a little purple today. Ooh.
I realized I'd have to be at the mall every day, so I didn't do it.
I think he's trying to chameleon you, Jenny. He's trying to match your lavender.
I love it.
I'm a psychedelic. I'm a psychedelic anarcho-communist. I believe in local production of all goods and services. I believe in small local networks and trusted networks. So I also believe in the fact that we're all a one human family and we need to stop murdering each other and stealing all of each other's stuff.
Well, talk to the Dems about shipping all our production facilities over to
Neither
China
Democrat nor Republican.
All right, we're gonna roll into a commercial.
Again, it's not the Democrats that shipped our stuff over the seas.
We're going into a commercial.
It was both the Democrats and the Republicans with NAFTA and their other free trade agreements like GATT. It was all of the politicians, you guys, all of them.
Oh man, that was weird. Hey, you America. Do I look like Sean Connery? Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
We are back, Jenny Beth. Yeah, exactly. Dr. T, you had a question that you wanted to ask real quick.
Not a question. Just after listening to this talk and what to say to my patients who are choosing the products out there is to avoid extracted products and just go to the natural flower at this until we can clean up the industry.
I personally don't agree with that. There's safe product being made in the distillate or concentrate market, and there's also dirty flower in the markets too. So at the same time, you can't live on one and not the other.
Sounds like it's lose all the way. Only
smoke weed. Smoke weed your friends grew.
That's why it's so important, Dr. T, to know product, to really learn what really works for you. So then that way you can just use your sniffer as your guide. But it's so hard nowadays with these consumer packaged goods and whatnot, as far as people being able to tell. So it is a very very kind of a buyer beware type of marketplace out there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
One of the things in Massachusetts is buyers have the option of asking for certificates of analysis when they make a purchase. Very few of them know that. Buyers have to be protecting themselves, which means you should be asking for certificates of analysis. You should be investigating the lab that is doing the work, and you should develop a relationship with your retail operator to know what level of detail they put into quality and safety.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
You're here, Dr. Chris. I do the same thing when I buy supplements for my family. I only buy supplements from companies that are primarily GMP manufactured in the USA, and if they do get admixtures or inputs from China or elsewhere, I always get third-party tested COAs before I make any.
Yep. But that puts a lot of onus on the consumer, and oftentimes consumers don't have the resources or the knowledge base to protect themselves.
There's not enough hours in the
Agreed.
day.
It's a sad state of the world that we literally our default mode is us being soaked with industrial poisons, and one has to be above average intelligent and full of energy and willing to advocate for oneself, just to live a somewhat toxin-free.
And unfortunately, in this industry especially, we have made marketing tools out of misinforming our consumers, which is really unfortunate. It's very unsafe.
You mean like
I put the onus
THC
back on the
percentage?
not just the. Hold on, Jason. God dang it! Like the fact that we still refer to something as indica or sativa, or that a gummy that is distillate formulated is supposed to be indica or sativa. I don't know how you know about stomach acid, but you guys, please just call me. I don't even care. Just have Granny call me from the dispensary. I'll walk her through it. But it's very frustrating that we have taken what we could have been amazing stewards of, and we've made it something that has been so greed focused that we are willing to misinform people who are trying to improve their health so we can make it.
The weed game spun off the rails with Proposition 215 in California and all of the store owners getting involved. Store owners were mostly people who had no real stake in the game and could just all of a sudden jump in because the penalties went from 10 to 15 years in prison to a slap on the wrist.
Right.
And any of us who was in the game before 215 saw it. We've seen them in the last, 20 whatever years, not paying farmers, not paying producers, and continuing to just outfit, expand, et cetera, et cetera. There are a couple of store owners who are an exception.
Very few.
Again, they are the exception, are not the rule.
Correct.
Fair enough.
This is going to be our first 11 o'clock show, you guys.
And on that, we're going to roll right into Miss Jenny Beth Dills. She has...
Let's just stay on for 24 hours, you guys.
Fuck you, I got shit to do.
Whoa. She's that Southern belle that loves to tell you all about your stuff and more. That's right. She's educated. She's the founder of Kind Cannabis and Justice Served, a 501c3 working on criminal justice moves and whatnot. That's right. It is none other than Miss Jenny Beth Dills.
All right, thanks, guys. And thank you to, I think we lost one of the guys, but I think they would be referred to as analytical chemists, not lab techs. Let's put some spec on those titles and those educations, Jason.
Sorry.
But
no one texted me.
I just wanted to give them their flowers. You're fine. I just wanted to give them their flowers for their education levels. But Jason, Chris Christie's not eating things again. On September 13th, 2024, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy officially signed a contentious bill that restricts the sale of hemp products, now requiring businesses to obtain a cannabis license. This legislation aims to address concerns over minors accessing Delta-8 THC products, which have been easily available in stores. The new law places hemp products under the oversight of New Jersey's Cannabis Regulatory Commission, the body managing the state's cannabis markets. Although Governor Murphy described the bill as flawed, he felt compelled to sign it to mitigate immediate health risks posed to the children. Despite hemp products being federally legal since 2018, the lack of regulation has led to alarming sales practices, with some of the products containing high levels of THC marketed to minors. Under the new rules, selling any hemp product with detectable THC to individuals under 21 is prohibited. Businesses have 30 days to remove such products from their shelves until the Cannabis Commission establishes clear guidelines. The bill's last-minute amendments raised significant concerns among industry stakeholders. Governor Murphy pointed out ambiguities in the definition of hemp products, which could either allow out-of-state products or limit sales to locally made items, potentially creating legal challenges. Supporters of the bill welcomed the move as necessary for consumer protection. Todd Johnson from the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association praised the extension of regulatory standards to hemp-derived products. However, critics worry that the commission's slow rulemaking process could delay effective implementation. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys finish reading that story on highat9news.com if you'd like to. It is quite a bit longer, but we have reported on this before, and we are going to go aggressively over time today. But Jason Beck is going to be really upset, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say about his favorite hemp seltzers probably not being available anymore in New Jersey for a while. But I think that this is important. Obviously, you know, some of the industry figures that are speaking out of greed as well, right? Because they want their interests protected. They want to be the only one that can sell intoxicating cannabinoids. But hey, I'd love to hear what you guys think. And Chris Christie won't be chugging any seltzers anytime soon.
Fair. Man, this is I mean, they're going after these products. They're not going to allow them to be sold. This is the first state that we've seen really be able to do this so far. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. People, I mean, but all their people are going to do is just drive to New York to go get it in New Jersey.
Truth.
You know, that's all that's going to happen. It's not like they're going to, I mean, they used to do that back in the day for all types of different things and whatnot. So this is more of the same. They're just going to collect all those bridge tolls.
Maybe that's
People still do that for states where alcohol is not sold on Sundays.
we had to drive to the county line in college to get it because I went to college in a dry county. And also New Jersey's the only state you have to pay a toll to get out of. So maybe they did know what they were doing.
Yeah, you know, Dr. Mark, my cousins that live in Vermont, they actually drive to New Hampshire every time they go to buy alcohol, and then drive back to Vermont.
Yeah, that's common in the East. I remember people used to drive to Maryland when we lived in Pennsylvania. Yeah, and then people in northern New Jersey, which is a huge population center, you could just drive into Manhattan and go to a trap shop, right?
Yeah. Or go to a license shop in Manhattan at that point.
But this
Are there license shops in Manhattan?
I believe there's one open now.
Yeah, there's one. I think that was the first one that opened when they was where they were at.
One.
Oh boy! But there are plenty.
There's 10 on every block if you're talking about the right store. It's like,
Exactly.
you get your sandwich, your newspaper, and your weed.
All of that. You have any thoughts on this, Chris?
So they weren't the first state to do this. There's been several states that have tried that. Immediately what happens is that the producers end up filing a class action lawsuit. And to date, the courts have been siding with the producers. So there was a Fourth Circuit Court ruling. So going back to 2022, there was a Ninth Circuit Court ruling that was basically about trademark infringement, and they won that case. Illegal products cannot, they didn't say that they're legal. They said that they are available for federal trademark protection. You cannot trademark illegal products. And so by the fact that the court says that these are qualify for trademark protection, that implies legality of Delta 8.
Wow.
Then probably 2 weeks ago, the Fourth Circuit Court, it was a case regarding wrongful termination, I believe, when an employee was terminated for using these hemp derivatives. And the Fourth Circuit Court sided on in her favor, saying that she was wrongfully terminated because these products, including THCO, which the DEA has said is absolutely a Schedule I controlled substance, because she was using THCO, the Fourth Circuit Court says that is a hemp derivative and therefore exempt from the Controlled Substance Act. Some of this goes back to the Chevron case being overturned, where state agencies they're no longer permitted to interpret when a laws or regulations are vague or unclear, agencies are not allowed to interpret that. So the DEA's interpretation that Delta 8 that is extracted from hemp is legal, but Delta 8 that's synthesized from CBD is a controlled substance, that THCO is a controlled substance. They're now saying that the DEA does not have the authority to make that distinction. And so the court, and I bet this will happen in New Jersey as well. As soon as producers start pushing back, it will be overturned, I would imagine.
Oh, they're definitely going to push back on that for sure. Not a chance. There's way too many people that buy products in New Jersey for them to not push back on that.
Well, and I think it's interesting that they're pushing it into you have to be a licensed operator to produce or sell. Like, so they're not saying you can't make it. They're not saying you can't sell it. They're saying sell what you got now in the next 30 days and get a license, which is going to take some time for them to create those standards, right? So yes, they're going to push back at it. But do we think, like, as most of us are operating in the licensed market, right? Do we think that licensed operators should be the ones that are responsible for creating these products? Because now we have this requirement of testing that these hemp producers don't have. We have these other requirements for public safety.
So there's no requirement for testing of these products, or if there are, it's inappropriate testing. The states that have moved forward with regulation of these products say that they have to be tested for contaminants. For example, pesticides, heavy metals, and mycotoxins. They're basically requiring these products to be tested for agricultural contaminants. The minute you take CBD and you start adding toxic organic solvents, high concentration of caustic acids, you leave the realm of agriculture and enter the world of synthetic organic chemistry. Nobody's regulations to date have said anything about testing for synthetic byproducts or residual reagents.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
And so the U.S. Hemp Authority came out with a big splash that they're going to start self-regulating. They specify that you can't have more than 5% of unknown contaminant in your product. And I say to them, if I give you a product that's 5% dog shit, are you going to consume it?
Yes, and
Fair
I mean,
enough.
I guess yes, and question, comment. If they're pushing it into the licensed cannabis market, and it has to be produced by a licensed cannabis producer that has the same license as your Delta 8 vape is going to come from the same guy that everything else comes from, right? Hemp derived or not. Will they not still be holding if they're running under that same licensed cannabis program to the same testing, at least the same testing standards that traditional cannabis in the licensed market is held to? And does that improve safety standards at all?
No.
Not even the
because
vitamin E acetate, because you're saying that 50% still contain vitamin E acetate. They would at least catch that, correct, or no?
Yes, but there was never any vitamin E acetate in the regulatory market. It was all black market.
Even with the hemp-derived products, because I think, God, I wish Josh was still here, because I think he said that he had pulled some things off and tested, and they're still testing for vitamin E acetate in sold in store CBD hemp-derived products to this day.
But that's not the regulated. There's no regulated hemp market per se.
I'm speaking on the right. I guess maybe I'm not communicating this the right way, and that's my fault. I'm not speaking clearly, so I apologize. The hemp market, because it's not regulated in the way that the cannabis market is regulated when you're looking at licensed THC containing products, right? Because he's saying he's still pulling hemp products that have been approved to be sold in stores that still contain vitamin E acetate and things like that. New Jersey is putting this under their cannabis program. So you have to be a licensed cannabis operator to sell or manufacture these products. That testing requirement would then kick down so we can at least catch that. Is that not even a little bit better for consumer safety?
Yeah, a little bit, but you're still going to have them putting out 35 synthetic byproducts of unknown toxicity.
Fair. But your 15-year-old's not going to buy it at the gas station with their boner pills.
So when we test these products, we are the only lab that I'm aware of. We put a warning on the certificate of analysis that says, in addition to the compounds reported here, additional isomers and synthetic byproducts were observed for which no toxicity information exists. This product would not be recommended for human consumption. So we have lost all of our hemp client base, with the exception of parents whose children went to the ER because of respiratory problems, or actually they stopped breathing. It's respiratory arrest. I have clients who have ended up in the ICU for 10 days before being moved to long-term care facilities from these products. Our customers are only parents, spouses, significant others of people who ended up in the ER. It's principals from the high school that are taking product off their children, off their students. Those are our clients now.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarity.
And when they move production of these products into a regulatory market, they're not going to be testing for the contaminants that are of concern, that are causing these issues. Delta 8 is safe. Delta 8 has an incredible safety profile. Delta 8 has nothing to do with this discussion. It's the contaminants that are produced alongside. Producers, we have shown in our lab that we can remove those contaminants, just like they would in any pharmaceutical product. We have shown this method to producers of some of the largest Delta 8 producers, and they ask me, why would I do this? It would cost me more money. Nobody makes me do this. Okay, so let's make them do this. Well, under the regulatory plans, nobody's making them do it anyways. They're just moving it on, so they're just going to start taxing it, essentially.
Well, they're going to start taxing it, but they're also going to put an age gate on purchasing, so you're not going to have principals coming unless they pulled out their mom's purse while she wasn't looking, and you're also going to have them at least beholden to some of these things that are tested for in traditionally regulated cannabis products that are on the market right now and that you test for every day. So, I mean, in New Jersey, at least, I think it's a little bit of a win for consumer safety, but that's just my opinion.
In New Jersey, you still have access to Amazon, and they sell these on Amazon.
Well, I don't have access.
Snap! Really?
I have access to Amazon in California, but I also can't buy the light bulbs that the state of California has approved because Amazon won't ship them to me. I know I tried because my old house had them. So there are ways to kind of control these things. Not that they're foolproof, but does anything help if we're really talking about the children? I mean, we know we're not really talking about the children. We're talking about the tax dollars. But if we're really talking about the children, any help is good help, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I'm running out of Diet Coke, Jason Beck.
On that, this has been fantastic. Fantastic episode. Thank you guys.
Has anyone tested Diet Coke for toxins? Because I think it's all toxic chemicals.
Dr. Mark, can I send it to you? Because I can just use my matcha katsu.
Oh boy.
Any of you heard of Olipop?
I have.
Olipop's a great soda made by my friends.
probiotic.
It's only got like a gram or two of sugar, and it's got 5 grams of fiber. All natural.
Can you get me a sponsorship?
All right. So
I can probably get you a free 6-pack.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, special thanks. I do want to thank Chris Hadala. Did I say that correctly? Chris? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, you did. Hudala.
Right.
Yep.
Chris Hudala of Pro Verde Laboratories out in the great state of Massachusetts, as well as Josh Swider of Infinite Chemical Analysis Labs here in California for coming on and being on. And thank you, Dr. Mark, for arranging this and finding this really important story. We went way over time today. And I'm just going to give you guys a quick heads up. Rico did not make it, but his headline reads, "Cannabis experts say weed reform is a race against time. Is the DEA delaying Biden's rescheduling proposal?" And so you'll be able to read that on our website after the show, and if you want to check that out. And thank you all.
His story is always about race.
It wasn't about race. It was a race. It was a running race. It was a running race, Dr. Mark.
I love what Dr. Mark did there. I'm very proud of that.
That was cute. Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big thank you to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity. Can you play? Listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry, you guys. Huge thank you to Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you for Cannabis to giving us a reason to do this every day. That's right, Cannabis Sativa L. And thank you to Cloud Media Partners. Adam in the building today. Yes, that's right. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.